Hi, everyone. Welcome to Food Talk Live. I'm your host, Danielle Nierenberg. This week, we're celebrating the lead up to Earth Day, which is tomorrow, with discussions with chefs and food experts from around the world to talk about the importance of culturally appropriate diets, diets that are good for people and the planet, and that really respect the generations of knowledge from farmers, cooks, and communities. These discussions are building on the recently released One Health approach to food, the double pyramid connecting food, culture, and health and climate from the Barilla Center for Food and Nutrition Foundation. From my perspective, it's high time that we recognize how farmers, indigenous peoples, elders, and cooks of all ages and cultures have been working to produce healthy and sustainable diets for hundreds and hundreds of generations. These are diets that are already very nutritious. Many are plant forward. And I think most important of all, they're delicious. We hope that you'll use the hashtag double pyramid to continue the conversations we've been having. Today, we'll be highlighting experts who are coming from the Mediterranean and Nordic regions of the world. I'm pleased to introduce Ori Shavit, an Israeli vegan food journalist and the creator of the blog Vegans on Top. She shows how veganism can not only be tasty, but the key to helping achieve better health and also helping the planet. She encourages eaters to consider conscious eating and ask the really important questions about the impact of their food choices. And we have Sharon Bond-Hogg, who is the owner and CEO of the first Canadian Indigenous restaurant franchise, Kekuli Cafe in British Columbia. She won the 2020 National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Businesswoman of the Year. She serves on the board of directors at the Indigenous Tourism for British Columbia, an organization that helps to sustain and promote Indigenous tourism businesses. And she's also on the All Nations Trust Company Board of Directors. Thank you both so much for being here. It's really an honor to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad. And I just want to give you both a chance to say a little bit more about yourselves and the work that you do. And I'm wondering, Sharon, if you can go first.
Okay. Well, my name's Sharon, and I'm an Inuit woman from just outside of Merritt, British Columbia. I am from the Nuayich Indian Band, and I started a restaurant here in the West Bank area. It's an Indigenous cuisine cafe, and we serve Bannock. Don't panic, we have Bannock. And we serve, a fresh, fast, casual style restaurant and / coffee shop. And I've been in the industry for almost 15 years, and I'm finally, we're into the franchising part of our business, and we really hope that we can get it going here soon enough.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ori, can you say a little bit more about yourself as well?
Yes, I've been working as a food journalist for many, many years before I went vegan, and I changed my diet about 10 years ago. And when I went vegan, Israel, there was always vegan food, of course, here in Israel, but no vegan culinary. And that was my mission, because I'm a foodie and I wanted to keep enjoying vegan food. And so I started to promote vegan culinary and vegan culture in Israel. And I've been a part of an amazing revolution that is taking part here in Israel in this field of actually teaching and helping people to embrace plant-based foods, to learn how to cook plant-based ingredients, and to enjoy it, of course. And not only they're very healthy for us and for the planet, but also that way we can reduce the damage that we also cause to animals. And it's a combination of all these elements that the goal is to make our world a better place.
Great. Thank you so much to you both for describing more about your work. Ori, sort of continuing on that theme, the Mediterranean diet and Israeli diets are very plant forward, already. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about, how you're sort of promoting this culinary aspect of vegetarian and vegan food in Israel.
So on one hand, you can say that the Mediterranean region in general, and of course Israel as well, we have a lot of plant-based foods in our national dishes like hummus, falafel, majadra, which is rice and lentil dish. And if I'm thinking about veganism and plant-based diets, then I'm thinking about our great grandmothers that were cooking here. There were almost no meat. It was something very rare. So actually this revolution is a culinary revolution in the aspect of putting dishes into restaurants, of having cooking classes that teach how to cook plant-based foods. But the grounds, the traditional foods, you have it already. It's something that is not like being invented but going back to our roots of cooking and traditional dishes that we already have. So my goal is actually to educate people, because in this region we also eat unfortunately a lot of meat, a lot of animals, different types of animals, because it's the West world and we imitate every other culture we see, and it became like this global thing of not that good diet as we used to eat in this region. And now I want people to learn how to go back to our roots and embrace more and more plant-based dishes to their everyday menus, like being something regular and not something that you need to look for or to work hard for, but something that becomes part of your lifestyle, every day.
I really like this idea of embracing going forward by going back and looking at more traditional diets. And Sharon, I think that's a lot of what the work that you're doing with Kekuli Cafe is. You're promoting, these wonderful fast casual dishes, but really relying on the past and the traditional practices of Native communities. Can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah. Well, at Kekuli, it's been since we first started, it's always been about eating healthy. First Nations people over the last 100 years have always been meat eaters, and deer hunting, moose hunting. We fish for salmon. We gather berries. We dig roots and berries, and so over the years, it's just been all that food. We were just limited to certain areas as well, because First Nations people were only told to hunt in their own area and on their own territories, because the government had put First Nations into little communities like reserves. So they were very limited to the hunting and the fishing, and those were our rights as well. So a lot of that was lost over time, and First Nations people, we live off of salmon, especially in our region, in the British Columbia region. We do a lot of salmon fishing, and they dip net, they use nets, and they go onto the river and they hang dangerously over the side of a river to catch their salmon for their winter supply. And they still do that today. I've gone fishing and I've done the whole dip netting, and it's a lot of work, and you have to look at the different ways of doing things and surviving. So the First Nations, they did a lot of, they weren't vegans. That was the one thing. Quite interesting. Although I love any type of good food like that. It's so delish. So the First Nations people were also nomadic. So they would go with the herds of caribou or the elk or whatever, right? They would follow them. And, we just think of the stories that we were told and stuff growing up. And, to me, it was all about the salmon and the venison, because that's what I grew up on. And so, and it was always home style food. It was always fresh food. It was never food from a box. And I think that's really important too. You know, as a fast casual restaurant, you know, there's a lot of fast casuals that serve different cuisines like Mexican, Italian, and stuff. And you don't hear of many Indigenous cuisine style restaurants, which you could consider like the 100-mile diet. If you've heard of the 100-mile diet, you know, First Nations have lived that for thousands of years, the 100-mile diet. So it's just basically, you know, it's just a lot, just keeping the food fresh and you know, having berries and the roots. I've been traditional medicine picking with my elders, and they brought me out to show me a lot of things about the medicines that they ate, and like sunflower root and the berries and the husham and sopalali. And yeah, so it's quite interesting to implement that into an Indigenous restaurant. That is basically the only fast casual restaurant that I know of that's out there that can do these kind of things. So
yeah, and it's fascinating to me. And I think one thing that I really appreciate about you both is that you're working to honor the earth. And Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, but Native peoples tend to think of the animals they eat as relatives, and they really, there's a lot of respect and care put into, you know, either raising or hunting them in a way that is respectful to the animals and to the earth. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, especially around salmon and deer.
Yeah. So growing up myself, you know, my family were hunters and gatherers, and my brothers are fishermen and hunters as well. And you know, it's always giving respect to the earth for being able to hunt a deer or a moose or something like that, right? You know, in restaurants in BC, we can't serve moose. It's not, you can't legally do that, but we can do venison. It's a deer. It's easily farmed here in British Columbia. So, you know, that's just the way we do that. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I'm wondering if you can both talk about, you know, obviously, you know, with the Barilla Center for Food and Nutrition's 7 cultural pyramids, we're really looking at how culture and the health of the planet and the health of humans are really inextricably linked. And I'm wondering if we can bring up the Mediterranean cultural pyramid, Bernie, who's my co-founder on the backside. Thank you so much. So this really looks at, you know, the Mediterranean region's, you know, most important foods and their impact on both the health of humans and our climate health. And so, Ori, I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the benefits of, you know, what is at the base of the health pyramid, you know, fruits and vegetables, nutritious grains, and why they're so important to the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, actually, I believe it's important to everyone. It's not something special for our region. Here it's very common, of course, and we have a lot of dishes that are based on these ingredients. I believe that when you have such ingredients that are freshly bought, and that you use them, as Sharon said, unboxed. They're not boxed. They are not that are fresh and basic ingredients that are also, by the way, sustainable by being able to keep them for long terms, like different types of legumes and grains that you can keep for a long time, and have a storage of them. And then of course also being practically very cheap to buy. It's not something that is expensive. You don't need to hunt it, and you can just store it and have it at your house. Just pull it out of the cupboard every day. And these are the most basic food. And when you come to think about what actually you feed people that are hungry, you don't send, fortunately, you don't send mooses and salmons to Africa to feed people. You give them rice and beans. So this is the basic foods of I believe, every culture. When you are in need of all the nutrients that your body needs, when it comes to protein, when it comes to calcium, when it comes to iron, when it comes to all these basic foods, you can get also from plants. And we live, we have one planet. We want to keep it, and we don't have enough room to grow so many animals to feed Israel's population or the world's population as well. So we are all in sort of a race to find, like all these new burgers and new meats and cultured meats and clean meats and laboratory meats, whatever you name it, while we have all the time in our backyards the lentils and the beans and the peas and the rice and the quinoa and all this stuff that can give us the perfect basis of culinary, amazing, endless amusement park that we can use and make delicious foods that gives us all we need without having all this damage that this industry is unfortunately being part of and causing the planet. So I know that Sharon was talking about her backgrounds, and also here people were eating meat. It was not like meatless country or meatless region, but the portions was so. It was like almost zero, Even in the Bible, they say you should eat meat like in the size of an olive, like a little bit. You don't eat meat like you do today. You don't have these barbecues, these crazy barbecues. We just had our Independent Day, Israel Independent Day, so I know what it is about. But so I truly believe that the amounts, even at Sharon's restaurant, I believe that you don't go and hunt. You need like sort of industrial meat. It's not like a free range, free. I don't know. It's so I believe that this part is a part of our past, and we should go further and see the future, because we need to feed so many billions of people. We need to use plants to do it.
I think there are lots of different ways to produce meat and produce all kinds of foods in sustainable ways. And we're not advocating, as for the Mediterranean diet to be completely vegan, at least from our perspective. I think there are lots of ways to incorporate meat as like a condiment, or eat much less of it than most Western nations.
Yeah, that what I meant. It's like the reduction of consumption to a different level, because we are in a very bad situation as I see it. So we need to do something that is much more than just changing a little bit here and there. We need to look at the pyramid and think over about about our lifestyle and how we consume food.
Absolutely. And I think that's why the Mediterranean diet, offers so much, because it really does rely on plant forward foods as a way forward. Sharon, I want to go back to you and talk a little bit about Bannock, which you call the most versatile bread on the planet. And when you introduced yourself, you said, Bannock, don't panic. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that.
Sure. Bannock has been one of our survival breads in the past. When the government put First Nations on reserves, they had very limited food items. So they would have to make, something out of whatever you would get from the government. So back in the day, they would get flour, they'd get lard, and they would have to make some type of sustainable sustenance of to survive, especially throughout those winter months, because picking berries and all that was you couldn't do that in the winter time. So First Nations would have to come up with something, and they came up with this, very thick, dense bread. But of course, today we have fryers and, sugar and nice things to sweeten it with and make it even healthier. So It doesn't always have to be white flour. You've got whole grains, you got whole wheat, and you could just do a lot with flour and water and milk and eggs or whatever. Our Bannock we like to say, is vegan, so we like to keep it, simple, and it's just a good treat now. First Nations people over the years, just because of their limited, when being on the reserves and being limited to food, they could only eat what they had, or they could only, because, it was hard for them to get off and go shopping. You needed a pass to leave the reserve. And, the Indian agents wouldn't come around all the time to get those passes to go shopping or whatever it is they needed to do. Even that was like back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s that happened, right? So there was there was a lot of holdback in that area. But First Nations did the wild salmon and venison. For my restaurant, we do consider, where did our food come from? So we don't just go and buy any industrial type of meat. We make sure that our food is taken care of before we purchase it. If I could go hunt my game for my restaurant, I would, but that would not be feasible. And First Nations eat meat. So, venison, salmon are the two ingredients that I like to use in my restaurant. And we do the rice, and we do lots of fresh vegetables and everything, and berries. We use a lot of berries in our ingredients for our recipes. And water is another one that's very important in our diet, and we should be getting a lot of water throughout our diet. And we have to be concerned about the water that is given to people on reserves in this country. They're still not drinking fresh water. They're drinking dirty brown water with lots of lead, and we've had to be concerned about that over the years. So it's really important to find out where your food comes from, where you're living. In this day and age, there's still reserves in communities that aren't taken care of. And so we have to think about that in our, as a First Nations person myself, making sure that everybody is, eating well, eating healthy, and we all need different minerals and vitamins in our body to survive and fight off diseases. And so eating healthy and fresh is really important. And I take that into consideration when we are working and coming up with things for our cafe to be healthy.
Great. And thanks for the clarifications about where your meat comes from and where your food comes from. You bring up a really important point about equality and equity in our food system. And I think that's really an important part of these cultural pyramids, that they're really identifying that there's no one size diet that fits all. That Indigenous peoples and Native peoples, especially in North America, face a lot of obstacles, and their diets have changed because of inherent racism in the food system and in our economic systems over the years. And so we really need to be focusing on food justice and social justice and food sovereignty for these communities and for us all. So thank you for bringing all of that up. Ori, I want to turn back to you and sort of get your perspective. There are many people who are resistant to looking at plant-forward diets because, they think that they need, to eat meat, as you said, maybe 3 times a day, and going meatless even 1 or 2 days a week, it sort of seems challenging for some people, especially in Western countries. And I'm wondering what sort of recommendations you can give folks to adopt a more Mediterranean style of eating.
So I believe that actually it's a matter of mind switch. Like every change we need to make it's not something technical. I'm as a food person, I'm very emotional about my food like anyone else. We all have our traditions and our things that we are used to eat and things that we used to eat at home, and commercials that we see, and a lot of stuff that change and make us, be very strict about not changing anything. And this is something that we have as people. We have like the fear of change. It's not only about our diet. And when it comes to diet, it's very, very emotional. So I believe that the first tip to anyone who wants to embrace a better diet, healthier diet, to eat more plants, to reduce the consumption of animal products, is to look at it as an adventure, as an opportunity, as something fun, you know? Because if you enter your kitchen and you go like, oh my God, I have to quit meat today, and I don't know what to cook. I don't have this, I don't have that. So your whole being is like being sad and miserable. Your food will be sad and miserable too. But if you enter the kitchen with a smile, and then you say, okay, today I'll put this aside. Let's see, what do we have? What we can use. Let's open up a cookbook. Let's open up the internet. Let's see new ingredients, new recipes. Let's try it out. I mean, just be open to it and look at it as an opportunity to learn, to educate yourself, to try new tastes, new flavors, new textures. There is such an amazing and broad cuisine that is plant-based, not only the Mediterranean one. I mean, if you look at Indian food or Mexican food or Chinese, Japanese, you have a lot of ingredients and a lot of dishes that are plant-based as naturally. I mean, it's not something that you should always, oh, what will I switch? What should I do, instead? How can I take the egg out? It's not like that. You can start by being friendly with foods that you already like. Just do it in the plant-based version. And this is people who try it out. I had a pop-up restaurant, and a few years ago, and the most popular dish was a carrot dog. It was like, I think it was 2015. We had a carrot dog that was served in a bun, like which is like a Chinese bun, like bao bun. It was like steamed bun, but in the shape of a hot dog bun. And we had a carrot that is smoked with scotch, that we used to put scotch on it, and it was smoked. It was so tasty, and people took a bite, and they thought that they were eating meat, and they didn't understand, because sometimes it's not about the ingredients. Sometimes it's about the technique. It's about the flavors. It's about how you serve the dish. It's about all the experience around your food. It's not always that important if it contains meat or not, because you can have the same feeling and the same enjoyment when you have a great veggie burger in your bun and you take a bite. You can enjoy it and it will be tasteful. And even if it's not exactly the same, it is still tasty. So I think some of the thing is not always to compare, what you used to eat to the new dish you try, but to try and ask yourself, do I like it? And most of the time, people like it. It's a lot in our minds, It's something like a switch we need to make.
Well, I mean, I think you make some important points about it. Has to be about the taste, no matter what you're eating, whether it's meat or plant. Right. It has to be tasty and delicious. Sharon, Ori brought up this idea of adventure and, trying new experiences. And, you with Kekuli Cafe, this is the first Aboriginal, Indigenous, cafe franchise in the world, as far as I know. And so I'm wondering how you sell that to folks who are not Indigenous. Do they look at it as something like that kind of adventure that Ori spoke of?
Yeah, definitely. I find that I do get a lot of non-Indigenous people that come into the restaurant. Like, we can't just focus on one set of people just thinking it's going to be Indigenous people coming into the restaurant. We get people from all over the world coming into the restaurant. Obviously not right now because of everything that's going on. But up until early last year, yeah, we've had people from all over the world come into the restaurant, and they are looking for something different, right? And we do have the options of vegan, and we have options of gluten-free, and we have vegetarian options. So, we do serve food for everybody at the cafe that something will appeal to them. But they are looking for something different, because I can't go to any other restaurant and get a venison burger. I can't go and get a wild salmon breakfast sandwich, just that the ideas that we have and the creative recipes that we use are things that no one else does in anywhere that I know of, that I've been to or even tried to research and stuff. So I think people are looking for that adventure and different experiences, and we offer different options so that anyone can come into the restaurant and they're able to taste something that you can't get anywhere else. And being fast casual as well, that makes it a little different, because a lot of people don't have time now and they just want to grab something and go. But it can always be something like wild smoked salmon. It could be a venison taco bowl. It could be a venison breakfast bowl. So it's really neat that you can kind of get those ingredients for breakfast or lunch or dinner for takeout.
Well,
And
Sharon, I think one thing that I'm really impressed by is that you have made it fast casual. This is not, fine dining that's not accessible and affordable to a majority of folks. And I think that's really key here, because, while I love celebrity chef culture, I've seen so many chefs sort of appropriate other cultures without recognizing, the work that people like you do. And I'm wondering if that's, why you decided to start Kekuli, that you wanted to spread this to a wider population than chefs who are sort of like, oh, I'll put this very expensive indigenous dish on my menu for this evening.
yeah, I think it's really interesting, because when we started 15 years ago, and even just everyone knows, not everyone, but a lot of people knew what Bannock was, and they were like, wow, you're serving Bannock. Like, you can get Bannock at a powwow, you can get it at a First Nations gathering, but now you can get it at a restaurant, and it's just really different, right? And when you do go to a fancy restaurant and you're going to get Bannock, and I look at the prices they're charging, I'm thinking, I know how much it costs, I know what's in it, I know how you made it, I know how long it takes. And they're going to charge double the price what I charge. And I'm like, it's quite interesting to see that. So yeah, I just think that there's a lot of, there's a lot of perception, I think, and fine dining, regular dining, fast casual, it can be very different. And it is neat that people can get that choice if they don't want to do fine dining, but you can still get a good venison melt burger at the cafe. Then that's a good thing. I definitely agree that with Ori that we need to change our diets, and we really need to think about where our food comes from. Personally myself, we'll eat meat-free food at home once or twice a week just because, right? And cutting out a lot of red meat too. I don't serve much red meat at the cafe other than the venison, because that is what I grew up on, and that's what my parents hunted, and that's a lot of First Nations depend on that, and even knowing how the food was treated when they went hunting. Like, sometimes people hunt for fun, which isn't great, right? And then the food's not respected.
Sure.
And so just making sure that our food is treated respectfully, and like Ori said, good thoughts, good food, right? You're going to create good dishes, and that's what I think about the Bannock as well. Is I can't go in making Bannock. I was in there at 3:30 making Bannock this morning because I had to be here for 5:30. And so tired, but I knew I had to do it. So you have to go in, and if I'm half tired, my Bannock is going to be half tired. And it's like, oh, this first batch didn't turn out that great because I'm not that great right now.
Oh, I'm so responsible for this. I apologize.
That's all good.
And Sharon, I'm wondering if we can talk about how you decided to start the cafe and why, however many years ago it occurred to you to do this.
Oh man. Yeah, I've been thinking of starting a business for many, many, many years. Back in the early 90s, I think I've always had it in me to be my own boss. So I've had 50 jobs, and I can name almost 50 jobs I've had in my life. And I realized, you know what? I need my own business. And that's just how it turned out, is finally I'm my own boss almost. I always say my customers are my boss. So without them, we wouldn't have Kekuli Cafe. But yeah, I just started it out because it just started with the Bannock, and people loved it. And it was something different that no one else did. And that kind of kicked it off from there. So when we decided to open a restaurant after 3 years of doing business planning, marketing, and getting our name out there, you know, we opened up the doors, and it's kind of scary when you think, who's going to come? Nobody knows what Indigenous food is. What's Native food? What's First Nations food, other than they know what Bannock is, right? And people would say, you know, oh, I love your theme. I love the First Nations theme. And I'm thinking, well, we're not really a theme. We're not like, you know, do they call Chinese food a theme? Do they call Mexican food a theme? No, it's not a theme. We're not a circus kind of thing, right?
Right.
No, we're Indigenous. We're a restaurant. We're / cafe, and yeah, we just looked at ensuring that, you know, we gave a great experience. We wanted to give that authentic Indigenous experience of the powwow music, of serving good food, good customer service, treating people with respect and acknowledgement when they walk into the restaurant. Those are all the things that I felt we were missing over the many years of when I dine out. I love to eat out. We, you know, for many years, it was like I had my own little customer service form in my head that I would think, hey, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I would do this, this, and this. And so I really ensured that I had a lot of these qualities and values put into our cafe. And, you know, it's morphed into this amazing ambiance of a cultural experience. We're missing some of that now because of the pandemic, but we really ensure that when people come in, no matter what, they're acknowledged and respected, no matter where they're from, who they are, and just being open to everybody. And it's nice to meet people from all over the world that just, you know, have seen us on TV from the Food Network or something like that, and they would be like from the UK, and they would come and just find us and totally have a great experience. So yeah, it's a lot about respect. And I think that's, you know, respect and values, morals, and ethics, and just, you know, knowing where everything comes from, where you come from, and as, you know, human beings, right? So
Sure. What a great point. It's not just about knowing where your food comes from. It's understanding where people are coming from on this journey to finding more healthy, sustainable diets. A question for you both. You've both talked about the importance of fresh foods and really producing, you know, food that is fresh. But for many cultures, preservation is key. And Sharon, I know, you know, in Indigenous cultures, there's all sorts of ways to preserve meat and grains and vegetables. And Ori, I know that fermenting and, you know, canning and drying foods is an important part of many food cultures as well. And I'm wondering if you can both talk about, you know, what kinds of preservation techniques that you use in the cuisines you develop.
Actually, I think that we use mostly the dry goods because, as I said before, they're very easy to store and they're very cheap, and it's being handy and very accessible. And then you can just, you know, keep it for a long time and use it whenever you like. But it's true, fermentation is also part of our region, mainly with veggies, like the basic things like cabbage and cucumbers and things that we see all over the world, not only in our region, that people used to preserve in salt, mainly in salt, and so they can keep these ingredients for longer terms and also benefit from the probiotics that are growing within the preservation process. But I think that today, because we are so privileged in the West world, we are not in a survival mode anymore, and we have fridge, and we don't need to keep the foods for that longer times, unless you do it in a culinary matter, but it is not like a must part of your culture. And then I think that most people, especially here when we have such an amazing sun and so many fresh produce, that people actually prefer to buy more and more fresh ingredients, and they're not. I think that the fear from using these ingredients is going. It's growing down, and people are looking for new ways to cook from scratch and not preserve and keep ingredients for a longer time. That's what I feel that is like these days way of cooking here in Israel.
Interesting, because I think a lot of the focus on fresh food, we've had this for a long time, local and fresh. But I
Right.
think for many, and this question just came up, and it was what I was thinking. For many communities, and in Israel as well, that not everyone has access to fresh, affordable food. And I think this is a question of access and affordability. And Sharon, when you're living in a very Nordic region of the world where it's cold for a long time during the year, having access to fresh food is just it's not just difficult, it's sometimes impossible.
Yeah, definitely. Across Canada, all the regions are so different, right? You got your northern region, and it's, very, very cold up there. So they're not getting all that fresh veggies, but they're paying quadruple the price of what we would ever pay down here in the South, just because of the transportation issues and all that stuff, for people up north to get fresh food and fresh veggies and stuff. But for instance, down here, like preserving food over the years, and I know people today and our elders, and they're teaching their youth. They go out, they go fishing, and they actually wind dry their salmon right there
Wow.
out on the rocks in the hot Fraser Canyon. They go through the Fraser Canyon, and people are wind drying salmon. It almost comes out, they have special way of cutting it, and then they're laying it over the racks, and they just let the wind dry. You can only do that in certain regions. You could never do that maybe in the wet coastal part of the British Columbia, because it's more damp and there's not enough wind and heat, so you're not going to get that. So every region is different throughout, from BC to across Canada. So the different methods of preserving food, but a lot of it would be drying the berries, and harvesting the berries, drying them, getting them ready for winter. Certain times of the year where you can tap the trees for maple syrup or birch syrup and stuff like that, right? So yeah, there's many different. For instance, I can a lot of things now, and we make our own vinaigrette dressings at the cafe, because we just like the homemade stuff, right? So we make our own Saskatoon berry dressing. We make our own maple dressing with maple syrup and all that. So, we try to throw some of those ways of keeping the food fresh and making large batches that will last us for restaurants. But we still, think of how we're making it, and kind of, I don't can it there because I don't have to. We go through it too fast, so we're able to make it fresh all the time. And but yeah, preserving the food, wind drying the salmon, making jerky, out of moose or deer. Yeah, in the different regions is it can be different all over the province. I mean, we have 204 First Nations territories and bands, I guess, tribes in British Columbia, and about 600 right across Canada.
Wow.
And every band is almost different, and they have many different languages as well. So all First Nations are totally different across Canada, and they do a lot of traditional things because of where they're from and what they have to deal with. here we've got the ocean, we've got the rivers, so we're able to get salmon and shrimp and lobster and or whatever they get on the coast and stuff. So preserving it is really important. And, you know, even in the springtime, when I went harvesting with my elders, you know, they took me out and we were able to get actual potatoes from the ground. You know,
Wow.
if people had to survive right now, at least I would know how to go out and, you know, live in the bush if I had to.
Right.
But, you know, because there are things that a lot of things you can eat from the forest, and you just need to know what to eat. And, you know, it's good to learn all those different berries and roots and things like that. So
Sharon, I wonder, are people, because I feel that here in Israel, you know, we're a very sunny land and we grow all the vegetables and fruit, and it's very, very easy for us. So for me, it sounds a little bit strange. And I wonder, are there people today that they cannot reach, like they don't have, like they're in a survival mode in your area? I'm not talking about like Eskimos, maybe Alaska, you know, places like that they don't have no other option than fishing. But I wonder if there are places in your area that people just, they cannot get other food.
Well, in British Columbia, there's quite a few remote territories. Like, you know, there's First Nations that live very remote. Like it takes 10 hours to drive.
Oh, wow.
Say from town, say you're in town, and they're about 10 hours into the mountains. So they need to drive through the mountains and they need to get to wherever. And, but a lot of their food gets flown in. A semi truck will come in and bring them food, but that's what they know now, right? They order the food in and they get food trucks coming in, right? But they are surrounded by the forest and they can hunt and they can fish and they can gather berries and they can do all that. A lot of the remote territories, you know, they all have a little store where the food comes in and they have houses and homes and they all whatever, right? But a lot of it is so remote they can only fly in or they can take 10 hours to drive into these remote territories. And so they're quite a ways from anything like, you know, superstore, grocery stores.
Wow.
No, I mean, I think it's such a great point. I think, you know, many people have misconceptions that everyone has access to fresh, affordable food. And that is not the case in many Indigenous communities. And I want to keep making that point and reiterating what Sharon said, that, you know, these communities have faced a lot of obstacles because of inherent racism across North America. And that needs to be not only acknowledged, but rectified in many different ways. And I think we're at a point in time where Indigenous communities are finally getting the attention and respect that they deserve for creating not just amazing food cultures, but creating local economies, being self-sufficient and doing just all of these amazing things that we can all learn from, whether it's preservation techniques or how to survive off the land, or just the inherent Indigenous knowledge that is so much a part of their cultures. And that includes not just food, but their religions and their respect for our earth and our natural resources. So thank you, Sharon, for creating Kekuli Cafe to really, you know, recognize that and give people an opportunity from all over the world to understand how Indigenous peoples live and thrive. I think this has been such an interesting conversation. Ori, if you could give the URL to your website, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. It's vegansontop.com. It's very easy. Vegansontop.com. This is the English part of my website. It's mostly in Hebrew, but I do have a few recipes in English. And you can also watch there my TEDx talk about choosing food, about conscious eating, about the way that I believe we all should be aware about the consequences of our choices in food, and then decide what we do with information.
Great. Thank you so much. And where can we find out more about Kekuli Cafe, Sharon?
Well, you can go to kekulicafe.com. Very easy, kekulicafe.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, Kekuli Cafe Bannock. And Yeah, I'm pretty much on all forms of social media, I think.
Great.
So,
Make sure people find you. I want to thank you both again and everyone who's been watching and listening and putting comments in the chat. A reminder that this episode will also appear on our podcast, Food Talk with Dani Nierenberg. And again, please share this discussion and other comments using the hashtag Double Pyramid. Tomorrow, we'll be concluding this series on Earth Day with chefs from South and West Africa. Thank you both again. Please stay safe and well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.